Hi, I'm Danielle Pashko from Soulhakker, and I'm here with Dr. Vincent Pedre, a leading authority on gut health and the best-selling author of Happy Gut and the Gut Smart Protocol, your most recent book. Thank you for having this conversation with me today, Dr. Pedre.
It's a pleasure seeing you and catching up with you because it's been we go back way back
I
like
know,
over I think like we've known each other since like 2012 or something
maybe
like
even longer. I was thinking in my head, it may be something like 15 years at this point. And I remember going to your first book launch, which was Happy Gut, which is an amazing book, by the way. I recommend that to so many clients when they have digestive issues. And now with your other new book, and it's funny because every time I think of gut health, you're like my mind always goes to you. I always think like, oh my gosh, like you're the person that I always like to get my information from. So I wanted to ask you because I'm sure people are interested to hear. All of us have a story when it comes to the career path we choose, especially when it's related to health and healing. And I know you have a story. So if you're comfortable sharing it, I think people would find that really interesting.
yeah, and actually I will say that in some ways I chose my career path, but in many ways it chose me.
Mhm.
And it just kind of became my destiny. It wasn't really where my focus was initially when I went into medicine. I actually never thought that I would end up as a gut health expert. When you're in medical school, like you're thinking, you're so broad and you're thinking, oh, I like this and I like that. Maybe I'll be
Right.
a pulmonologist. Maybe I'll do cardiology. Maybe I'll do immunology. And honestly, I was still not 100% um, directed even towards the end of my residency training in internal medicine. But I knew that I didn't want to practice medicine in the way that I was taught.
That's interesting. Huh.
That was very clear to me. And it was during that time as I was searching for the answers. I was really just searching for the truth because intuitively I just knew that honestly, and I was quite depressed at the end of my residency training. And for people to like get the picture, like this is after 4 years of pre-med in college, 4 years of medical school, and then 3 years of residency training. This is an 11-year track. And at the end of it,
Wow.
I just thought to myself, I am just a highly educated drug pusher for the pharmaceutical industry.
Hmm.
That's basically what they train you to do because in internal medicine, it's all about like what prescription, what drug are you going to give the patient for their symptoms? But you're not thinking in reverse, like, well, where is all of this coming from? What is the root cause?
Right.
All of that is secondary to prescribing a medication. So as I was looking for what I call the truth, like what really is behind disease, because intuitively, I can't explain why, but just a gut feeling
Mhm.
that what I had learned was only half the truth, wasn't the full truth. So I was seeking that. And in that path, I did a yoga teacher training. Then I ended up training in medical acupuncture. And then I ended up finding my way to functional medicine. And it was really, I attribute it to acupuncture because actually between the yoga and the acupuncture, because yoga brought me back to looking at the person as a whole. And
Definitely.
I had discovered yoga, breathwork, meditation right before I went to medical school at the age of 21 back in 1995
Mhm.
when it was still not mainstream. And I was looking for ways to soothe and calm my nervous system. And that's how I found my way to breathwork, meditation, and yoga. So when I finished my training, I decided, you know what? I'm going to train in yoga.
That's so funny.
And
That's around the time that I started doing yoga too. It was in high school, and I also felt very drawn to it. And it wasn't popular. I had to practice in the East Village because it's the only place that I could actually find classes.
Yeah, and then it just exploded. So this is like the early 2000s.
Mhm.
I decide I'm in my late 20s and decide that I'm going to do a yoga teacher training. And what it did was it brought me back to the heart and soul of what I wanted to do. Because I always knew that I wanted to be a holistic practitioner, more integrative medicine. I really looked up to and admired doctors like Dr. Mark Hyman,
Mhm.
Deepak Chopra, Andrew Weil. Like they were trailblazers at a time when it was being called alternative medicine. I think it should just everything should just be complementary to
Absolutely.
itself because I don't think that Western medicine is all bad. I just think that the scales tip too far in that direction. So in this discovery path, and when I went and did medical acupuncture, started studying systems biology, and for the first time, I'm thinking about how every system in the body affects every other system, something that we don't think that way in doctor training. Like the heart is separate, the lungs are separate, the kidneys are separate, and no one's really like putting everything together. Everything's broken down into specialists. And when you're in the hospital, you're being seen by the cardiology team, and then you're being seen by the, whatever other team, infectious disease. And sometimes they're not cross talking.
Right.
And and the whole person is lost in that process. So when my mind opened up to systems biology and the interrelationship between how everything affects everything, that's when I found my way into functional medicine. And at that point, I had been suffering from IBS symptoms for over 2 decades. And
Wow.
honestly, I thought there's no real solution in Western medicine. I mean, you can take acid blockers, you can take antispasmodics, but there's really not even a teaching around like how does diet nutrition affect the gut and why do people have IBS flares? And so when I discovered functional medicine, I started realizing that what I thought at that point I had just kind of like just submitted myself to this is my fate. I have a weak stomach. It's always going to act erratically. When I eat out, I don't know if it's going to sit well, if I'm going to be sick the next day. It's just the way it is. And I'm just going to have to live with this for the rest of my life to discovering that the microbiome, the gut microbiome and the gut lining and leaky gut. And then I went back and started thinking, like, wait a second. I was on 2 to 3 rounds of antibiotics every single year from the age of 10 to like 19 years old. So for 9 years, I was on like 20 plus rounds of antibiotics.
Wow.
They
That's
had destroyed my gut microbiome, had caused leaky gut, had led to food sensitivities to wheat, gluten, dairy. And now I understood why I was feeling the way I was. And basically, I started working on my gut as I was learning functional medicine. I made myself my first patient.
that always makes you the best practitioner, though. Unfortunately, the best healers, the best doctors, the things they're really, they know is because they've lived it, they've experienced, and they've healed from it, and they could speak the truth because it's kind of like I've been there, and I'm telling you, this works.
There's no substitute for experience, and honestly, for it to work, I had to completely change the way that I thought as a doctor.
Yeah.
Because in medical school, we're kind of taught like which medication solves the problem for the patient. And there's a lot of magic bullet mentality, like hypertension, give them this. If they have this, give them that. And I had to shift my thinking to like, okay, you've got to change your diet. Okay, you got to watch out for pesticides. Okay, I need a probiotic, but I also should be eating fermented foods and
Mhm.
I should be taking nutrients to help heal the gut lining. And so it's a multi it's what do I want to say? It's a complex multi-pronged approach.
Yeah.
It's not one thing,
It's never one thing.
it's multiple things that
Totally.
add up to the whole. And through my own experience with myself, I just became very curious because the the lack of solutions for gut issues was the thing that most frustrated me in my training.
Oh, totally. I mean, if someone
And
goes to a doctor, a gastroenterologist, and they're labeled IBS, it's like you just have like there's no explanation half the time. And so to be able to give them tools nutritionally and to work through that holistically, I mean, that's huge. People to understand their microbiome and what they can do for themselves. I mean, that's not a discussion that's taking place, unfortunately.
no, I mean, IBS is just a blanket term that
Yeah,
basically is just kind of labeling something that they don't know what the root cause is for.
right.
So I became very curious about that and also curious about patients who came in with gut issues and migraines. I saw that connection a lot. People with migraines had IBS. People with
Hmm.
allergies had gut issues. People with hives, also gut issues. People with recurrent sinus infections, also with gut issues. So I became just really curious about it. It wasn't that I was trying to become a gut expert, but I was just doing what I loved, and it felt fun to me because I saw people getting better, and people would refer friends, work colleagues,
Hmm.
family, and next thing I knew, I was becoming a gut expert by accident because I was just gravitating to what I loved. And before I knew it, I was just like, wow, like my 30 to 40% of my practice is all gut health issues. Uh,
I
I
mean,
went I went from a generalist to becoming recognized as a gut health expert.
absolutely. And I totally relate to that. Same thing with me. You know, I worked in nutrition, but after having gone through Lyme disease and some chronic health conditions, that became such a focus. And my healing through that became what I became very good at and I could explain to other people. And it sort of just became my world, even though it was almost like by accident, but at the same time, we're able to use that to help other people. So that's amazing. And, you know, speaking about all of this and about how everything's interconnected, one of the topics that I love is the nervous system. And I hear you speaking more about that as well and going back to IBS and how our emotional state and anxiety can trigger those things. What do you see as the gut's role and the nervous system and people dealing with chronic stress and trauma and how that relates to their symptoms?
It's so integrated. I mean, I really think that even though we call the gut the second brain, it's really the first intuitive brain. It's where we feel things in a nonverbal way. I do feel like I like to say that the gut is where we digest our emotions. And a lot of times, I mean, ask anybody, like you're nervous, you have a big test coming up, and you start feeling like your gut doesn't feel right, you've got to run to the bathroom, or you're going through a major emotional upset and you just have a pit in your stomach and you lose your appetite. So we know for sure that there's this strong connection between the gut and the brain. And now the science really supports it that it all has to do with the vagus nerve and it's specifically the ventral vagus, which is the rest and digest branch of the vagus nerve that for people out there who are biohackers, it's also involved in heart rate variability. And it's what helps our bodies relax. The vagus nerve controls a lot of different things, including gut permeability, the production of stomach acid, the secretion of digestive enzymes. So when your vagus is off because you're stressed, and stress is probably one of the biggest things that just
Yeah.
throws the vagus off, you get into sympathetic overdrive, fight or flight, that
Mhm.
shuts down the ventral vagus. And then you're sick to your stomach, you're constipated, you're not digesting food well.
Mhm. And you mentioned
The
migraines also, which is also connected to poor vagal tone and all of that and too much
very much.
anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah, very much. And the way that we react to stress. So it's really interesting because it's kind of like one of those chicken or the eggs
Mhm.
because the both systems are affecting each other. The brain is affecting the gut through the vagus, but the gut is also affecting the brain through the vagus nerve. And we know that the vagus sends more fibers up to the brain than down to the gut. About 80% of the vagal nerve fibers are actually pointing up from the gut to the brain and from the periphery, not just the gut, from the lungs, the heart, everything. So the internal organs are sending signals back to the brain. And they happen to be through 5-HT receptors, which are serotonin receptors.
Mhm.
And those receptors are stimulated by serotonin that's produced by enteroendocrine cells, but also by serotonin produced by the gut microbiome. So the gut microbiome also is controlling vagal tone and information being sent back to the brain. The importance of that is that the vagus actually helps to quiet down the brain through GABAergic neurons. So on the other side, when the vagus fires, when it sends a signal from the gut to the brain, it's releasing GABA, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. It tells everything to quiet down, to just chill out. And unfortunately, I think too many people are walking around with poor vagal tone.
Mhm.
And we were talking a little bit about that when we came on, about, when you're dealing with chronic health issues, and you were saying like how you were biohacking the Lyme disease, everything, and you just hit a wall,
100%. Yeah.
right? You
Mhm.
hit a wall and you couldn't get past that wall until, right? Until you basically soothed and calmed your entire nervous system.
That was the way out for me because when you're doing all these things, even having a perfect diet, I mean, I considered my diet to be pristine, but I was still having issues from talking about the vagus nerve. I was having digestive issues, dizziness, vertigo. I developed POTS, and all these things were happening. And until I ended up working on down regulating the nervous system and getting myself into a calmer place, it was only then that I could actually start to heal. So I
Yeah.
totally relate to what you're saying about the connection and how it affects our gut so much. And funny story, like speaking about the gut brain connection, and like for me, I'm married now, but when I was dating, when I would go out with somebody that was like not the right person for me, it sounds crazy, but like my stomach would go off. Like I'd be like, oh my God, like I have a bad stomach ache, or I'd have like these issues, or like feel like I have to run to the bathroom. Like crazy things would happen because intuitively that my brain down here knew that that person was not right for me. So
Yeah.
it's sometimes we have to listen, but
It knows without words, and
knows
and
without words.
you
Yeah.
cannot heal a stressed out body.
Oh,
And even
absolutely.
like you said, like I saw this for years with type A high-strung New Yorkers that they were doing everything right, like all the check boxes, the
Mhm.
diet,
Yep.
the supplements, like seemingly everything right, but they were still living in a very stressed out fashion. Their nervous system was in a constant fight or flight. And what I learned from that is that the missing factor is really nervous system regulation.
So what
It's
do
really
you do for your nervous system regulation? I'm curious. I know yoga is a part of your protocol, but I don't know about now, but I know that was in the past. Like how do you
huge.
say?
I actually go to yoga when I can, once or a lot of times I go twice a week to yoga. And I found that that's a very important key part of keeping me balanced. There's certain things that are non-negotiables for
Right.
me that I just make sure that I don't miss. The other part is like gym. But if I was just doing gym, which is a lot of more adrenaline stuff, high intensity stuff, which is good for regulating the nervous system. But if I was only doing that, that's not enough, in my opinion, because you do need more of the calming practices. And I'll do breath work and I still do meditation. I've been using the heart math, inner
I love that
balance.
math. Yep.
So I kind of switch up and do different things. And then just getting outside and getting in nature, going to the parks.
Right? So much of the best stuff is like free. I mean,
Everything, yeah, like we like all those people out there who are like biohacking to the nth degree, like
yeah,
stem cells and all that. The true biohacks are all free.
I
And your body is a biohacking machine. Like even just thinking like what you did, and I wish I really like admire that because I mean I've studied yoga, but I really wish I would dedicate some energy to learning more Qigong. But just thinking how, just with certain intention, breath work, movement, how you can like rebalance the energy in your body. And
oh,
you're not using any fancy technology to do that. You're using just ancient technology, which is our bodies have this ability.
absolutely. I mean, I had done 60 to 70 hyperbaric oxygen sessions. I have a red light in my house. I have an infrared sauna, cryo cold plunging, nootropics.
Yeah,
I've like everything, everything,
biohacking, like
everything,
yeah.
like beyond. And it took someone who was a Qigong master to bring me into the park, stand barefoot, and start doing these exercises and hitting my stomach, these intestine exercises, actually, which I think you'd really be into because, and I also do belly button healing too, which is another conversation we can have later. But they really help to work on the gut. They really help to ground you. They help with fatigue. And I was like, what is going on? Like, what, like, and I was so used to being so athletic prior to my health challenges that this stuff seems so like simple. And I was just like, how is this going to work? But it actually did so much. And sometimes softer can actually make us stronger. And that was one thing I learned. So it was very interesting. So I think you may be into this stuff. Maybe it's your next chapter.
It's also like the you know the different types of breath work out there
Mhm.
that are meant to move emotions and stuff and people get so enamored with these different types of breath work. Like I had a patient recently who suffers from a lot of poor sleep, like insomnia. They're on CPAP, but they had just gotten into doing Wim Hof breathing.
Mhm.
And, you know, that's 30 rounds of breath and a long breath hold,
Right.
right? And then you pause, you breathe, and then you do it again. But it's a very activating breath.
Hmm.
And he was doing it at 9 p.m. before bedtime.
Oh,
And and I told him, wait, no, like if you're gonna do Wim Hof breathing, I think Wim Hof breathing can be great,
yeah.
but morning, not at night. I'm like, when did Wim Hof say that you should do the breath work? He's like, oh, he says do it in the morning. I'm like, well, that's when you should do it, not at 9 p.m. when you, because that's gonna activate your sympathetic. Like I was doing during COVID. I had discovered a Kundalini breath sequence, and I was doing Kundalini breath work with breath holds every morning. I did that for 18 months during COVID. And it used to be the way that I would wake up. And actually, by the end of the breath sequence, which was usually between 15 and 20 minutes,
Hmm.
I was wide awake and I didn't even need coffee or caffeine.
Oh, I believe it. I know that stuff can really move you. I do some chi circulation exercises in the morning that move the breath, and it's like it gets you going. So I totally
Yeah.
think that's great. And speaking of coffee in the morning, because I know that okay, there's a whole controversy about coffee and especially what it does to the gut and if it's good or if it's bad. And there's all this conflicting information. And I'm just curious because now that you have this coffee line, is it made for sensitive stomachs? I'm sure it's mold free and has all that good stuff, but I'm just curious.
It's organic, it's mold free, toxin free. I wanted to come out with something that people could drink and feel that it's not going to affect your stomach in a negative way. And I think a lot of people don't realize that the coffee that they're drinking, if it's not organic,
Mhm.
probably has pesticides in it, potentially could be mold contaminated. There
Right.
was a study where they looked at 25 different samples of green coffee beans, and 13 out of the 25 were contaminated with ochratoxin A, which is a mycotoxin,
Mhm.
which can cause a whole bunch of uh, health problems from brain fog. It disrupts the gut lining. So, when coffee doesn't sit well, you might be thinking it's the coffee, but it could be something that's in the coffee. And also, so many people get coffee to go in those
Mhm.
plastic lined cups,
Yeah.
and they don't realize, like, I started looking into this last year when we were coming out with the Happy Gut coffee, and just looking at the effects of microplastics, because microplastics, as we know, they're endocrine disrupting
Right.
chemicals, right? Plastics. So they act like estrogen in the body and they create hormonal imbalances. But I was curious, do they do anything to the gut or the gut
Mhm.
microbiome? And I started seeing studies. One study showed that people with inflammatory bowel disease were twice as likely to have, like, had more than twice the levels of microplastics in a fecal sample than people without inflammatory bowel disease. And there's not a lot of human studies yet, but I started looking at animal studies and they found like microplastics in mice would cause weight gain and liver function abnormalities. There was another study done in zebrafish that showed that it actually breaks up the mucus layer of the gut lining and then causes the overgrowth of bad bugs.
Wow.
So I really wanted to not just come out with a coffee, which is right here, Happy Gut Coffee.
Okay.
Which is, people can trust that it's low acid. It's a dark roast, making it lower in acid, easier for the digestion. And me being sort of like the canary in the coal mine,
Huh.
my digestive system is very sensitive. I had actually not had coffee for 7 years
Wow, that was like
before.
me too. Yeah. And then only certain brands I can tolerate, but
Yeah,
I
only
want
only
to try
certain brands, and some of them, even the ones that are mold free, there's some that are still quite bitter, or they
it.
just they just don't taste quite right. So I wanted to come out with something that meets people where they're at, because you're not going to get people off of coffee. People love coffee. 150 million Americans adults drink coffee every single
Yeah.
day. And there's like 2 billion cups of coffee served daily. It's the most consumed beverage on the planet. And if I can just be one of the people contributing to getting just people to wake up and realize that the K cups are exposing you to
Oh,
microplastics,
I know that, the
that
Nespressos, all of those. It's
all
incredible.
of these conveniences are actually not good for our health, and just creating like a bigger conversation around it and how it affects our gut, but also reminding people like there are good things in coffee. If you get a good coffee bean, like there's polyphenols
Mhm.
that serve as prebiotics for the gut microbiome. So it was just another way to really meet people where they're at
Mhm.
with a really good quality product that is in line with my philosophy of what I do and what I teach.
Well, I'm going to try it for sure because I love coffee, but I'm very particular about what coffee I drink, and I have a little bit of a sensitive stomach. So I think I'll respond well to this. So that's exciting. And also, just I wanted to ask if there's any like top herbs or functional foods that you use in your protocols for immune or gut repair that you think are like the best.
Lately, there's some, I'm going to give you my top three,
Okay.
because that's evolved a lot from where I was years ago. And it's partly it's just our knowledge is evolving, but also just seeing what other practitioners are doing, and we share information and what seems to be working. Because the goal is always like, how can we create gut healing the fastest that we can? And for anybody listening, like, don't substitute this for nervous system regulation. I just want to like emphasize that again, because people think like, oh, I'll take these things,
Yes. Thank you for clarifying
but
that.
I'm not addressing. You've got to these are my top three, but at the same time, you've got to do nervous system regulation in whatever way that means for you. If it's Qigong, Tai Chi, yoga,
Mhm.
breath work, you've got to do something that calms your nervous system. So, number one actually is something that's very new and it's just now becoming very popular, peptides.
Hmm.
I know like GLP-1 has become very popular, but actually there's certain peptides that I like to use for the gut. One of them is BPC 157.
Hmm.
And I've seen some really great results with BPC 157. Depending on the patient and where the issues are, I either use a rapid release or I use an extended, a delayed release formulation. And there's also other peptides like larazotide and KPV that they basically trigger a healing response within the gut. And specifically, they are helping to tighten up those tight junctions. And they do it better than some of the old classic nutrients like L-glutamine. Even though I still use
Yeah.
L-glutamine, like I still, again, use a multi-pronged approach because I think we need as much help as we can get. But I'm seeing people's food sensitivities reduce with peptide therapy.
Are you using an injectable or orally?
Orally,
Okay.
yeah, so that it's going to the gut. And but the thing with these peptides is the first month, maybe the second month, even the third month is going to feel like nothing is happening.
Right.
Then you're getting into the fourth, fifth, sixth months, and then you start noticing that something is changing. And I did this experiment again on myself over the winter. I started like in October taking BPC 157, and typically in the winter I can't have dairy. It'll trigger my histamines.
Mhm.
It'll make me more prone to getting infections.
And
I
from
will
a Chinese
get
medicine perspective too, like TCM, like it's too damp, it's too cold.
too damp,
Yeah.
yeah. So it would cause nasal congestion. And this year with having the BPC 157,
Mhm.
I actually was able to have some cheese and dairy over the winter months and not really feel any negative effects from it.
Wow.
And that's the first time in years. And what was really, really surprising to me is because I have never been able to have cheese during allergy season because
Mm.
it'll trigger, I'll get my histamines up, I'll start sneezing.
Yeah.
This year with the peptides, I was able to actually have cheese, which I love. That's one of my guilty pleasures.
Too.
And I had no like minimal allergies. So that's number one. Secondly, is something called SBI, serum-derived bovine immunoglobulins.
Mhm.
And what they do is they bind toxins in the gut. They can bind things like endotoxin, which is responsible for inflammation, and endotoxemia or postprandial endotoxemia is something that everybody gets a certain amount of. But the more leaky your gut is, the more likely there's going to be more endotoxin. And what they found is that in studies where they've looked at endotoxin levels, they find that rises in endotoxin precede weight gain, obesity, and eventually diabetes. So I use the SBI, serum derived bovine immunoglobulins.
Sounds like that would be good for mold as well.
They bind all different types of toxins. And the thing to note with it is that it also helps protect the gut lining and helps to, so it's also working to heal and seal the gut, reverse leaky gut. The only caveat with them is that if you're prone towards constipation, you have to be really careful with the dosing because it can easily knock you into constipation because it is a bit of a binder. And
Mhm.
the great thing about them is that they don't leave the gut. They don't get absorbed into your body. So they're binding the toxin and then being pooped out with it.
Mm.
So that's number two. And then number three is butyrate.
Mhm.
And different people react different ways, but butyrate is a postbiotic product that is anti-inflammatory, helps to control insulin sensitivity. It promotes the health of of the cells that line the intestine, the colonocytes, and it also helps with brain neuroplasticity. So it's also a really great healing nutrient as part of a complex protocol, not by itself, but in the bigger picture, especially with people who are low butyrate producers. So I would say those are my top three. If I threw one more in there, it would be spore-based probiotics,
Hmm.
because the spore-based probiotics, one, they're highly effective. They produce their own antimicrobial peptides that help to kill off bad things in the gut, like yeast and other pathogenic bacteria. And they don't have to be refrigerated. They're very resilient. They actually, even though the bottle comes with an expiration date, they can last for, I mean, they've
Yeah.
been able to regerminate spores found in fossils. Like they basically they just can last forever, but they're super important for helping to create a healthier gut ecosystem. And they're also safe for people who have a lot of bloating or gas. They're
Mhm.
not going to make you gassier.
Or like if you have SIBO as well.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. So they were looked at in SIBO, and that was actually the first place that I was looking for a probiotic that I could use with SIBO patients that wouldn't make them worse, because you can't use the regular probiotics
Right.
like lactobacilli, bifido. They're gonna make them very gassy.
Right. And not everyone does a SIBO test, so you have to go on the assumption they may have it. And if we want to recommend a good probiotic, something that won't bother them. So that's a really good suggestion.
Yeah, so if you're already bloated,
Yeah.
then you might want to think about a spore-based probiotic as a place to start and
Yeah.
test before adding in other types of probiotics.
I totally agree. And we're wrapping up, but just so everybody knows, are you working on anything exciting now? I think I saw you have a course going on.
A couple of things. So we're gonna be getting a couple of our supplements on Amazon very soon, including Happy Gut Coffee is going to be available for order through Amazon Prime. That's coming up. We're also launching a gut brain mastery program. It's a course really about teaching people how to biohack their brain through their gut, and it actually includes a lot of meditation and breath work
I
type
like
stuff.
that. I really like that you're doing it internally, and I think, I mean, you know how much I'm into this stuff, but I think that's such a great way to hack your brain as you're doing this internal work.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I learned that there's a lot of things about like that we think we attribute to the brain, like depression, anxiety, like the way that we react to stress. We think it's all here, but it's actually being programmed by the gut microbiome and the gut. So when you work on the gut, the brain gets better.
Yep, absolutely. So, what is the best way for people to reach you? You have a big following on Instagram, or should they go to your website, or are you still taking patients?
They can follow me at on Instagram. I put out a lot of free content at Dr. Pedre, Drpedre. And I have two websites. The website for Happy Gut Coffee is happygutcoffee.com, so they can check out the coffee there and a lot of the other free information. We're always putting out informative blogs about gut health. And I do still see some patients
Mhm.
one-on-one. They can People can go to pedremd.com to schedule a free discovery call.
Amazing. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I'm sure people will learn a lot, and I'd like to talk to you even more after this, more about the Qigong, because I think you might be really good at the martial arts